Well, good morning and welcome to another little video. Quite a lot of mosquitoes up here again this morning, so I'll try and make this one quick. I don't like it when they get in your ear. Okay, so the collapse of time. This is something that's a very strongly represented idea in our spiritual text of A Course in Miracles. And if you're not familiar with that book, get online, look it up, and it will assist you invaluably in bringing to a sense of fulfillment, the atonement in you, wherein you can learn to reconnect with a sense of oneness with all living things and experience yourself through the enlightenment of your mind. So, which is what any true spiritual path is for. So the collapse of time is, people write to me often, not so much lately, I guess, because in my own association, you always have to keep your finger here, in my own association, I no longer have such questions or doubts or wonderings about such things. And the idea of the universe as a living organism, and the idea that that organism presents lessons according to the manifest need of the projection of the mind, is a true one. And so learning to collapse time then is part of an unlearning and relearning process about yourself that takes you into uncharted territory. And so from a human perspective, and so obviously in keeping it singular, situations and events will show up in your own and in my own transformational experience as opportunities to learn lessons that we're being presented with conceptually, right? But they have to be experiential. So an experience, because an experience is bona fide, and it's actually a bollard in the mind that you can tie a rope around, like it's secure. You know, if you just have beliefs and concepts of things, there's nothing really secure there. You know, and if you were to climb a mountain or just read books about climbing a mountain, then one would be real to you and the other one would just be possibilities. You know, so learning the lessons of life, and collapsing time is one of those lessons to learn. Learning the lessons of life then is something that has to be experiential. I mean, we're in it as it seems to be anyway. So what difference does it make what it is that you choose to learn? But as you choose to ascribe a new purpose, which is higher learning, to the interactive part of your life, so you're going to begin to get different results. Right now, the average human being, or every human being, is born into the world with no idea why they're here. Completely no idea whatsoever. And we just make stuff up. We make up an education. We invent things based on science and religion and everything else. And we say, right, let's all learn this together because this might be useful. Useful in running an economy until a virus comes along, and then you know, where is the true reason then? What is the true purpose of our experience in the human realm, in the physical realm, etc., right? So, and all of those questions, like if you get online and get yourself a copy of A Course in Miracles, or go to the website, I'll post the link below. You can get the free PDF download of the Sparkly edition of A Course in Miracles, and start reading and doing the workbook lessons, because experience, right? But collapsing time, getting back to it, I get people that ask me from time to time, what are you talking about, collapsing time? And it's quite a lengthy thing to try and put it in words, and to, you know, it's hard to see the light bulb go on in somebody else when you're trying to explain it. I find it easier to use a visual aid which is what we're going to do today, on the whiteboard. Now, and the reason I find it easier to do it this way is because, as you'll be aware, got me, mosquito. As you'll be aware, people's ways of perceiving the world are either logical or creative. You know, we have this left brain, right brain kind of thing. And I'm a left brain. I think it's left brain. That's the creative brain. I'm a left brain kind of person. I see things in my mind in pictures. So when you're talking to me about something in your life, I'll see pictures of it in my head. I'll make up or imagine pictures. Some people will see things in mathematics or in words or whatever, and it'll just sort of, they'll have that kind of connection with the verbiage. But I see things in pictures, so I find it easier. And I had the experience for myself also that I sat with one of my teachers for many years and heard very little that he said. But then one day we had a guest teacher, I guess you would call it, come in, who was very pictorial in his speech. And in that one class that I attended, I feel that I learnt a hell of a lot more than all those other years put together. But then, you know, everything works together. I couldn't have not heard his pictorial discussion without everything else that went on before. So it's just the way it goes. So time, let's look at time, okay? From the Big Bang to the little whatever. So here's the Big Bang there, and there's, let's say, 130 billion years to there, which is where science estimates that we are since the Big Bang, roughly 130 billion years. And then who knows where it goes to from there, but at least as long as it's already been. All right, now, this is our timeline. So alpha and omega, okay? Now, within that timeline, right, human life, let's say, has flourished for, let's be generous, let's give it 150,000 years. I'm trying to think how old the Ice Maiden was, the oldest, 2.5. Anyway, we'll just say, we'll give it 200,000 years, okay? And here we are there, and obviously this goes on forever and ever that way, and almost forever and ever that way. There's our human experience so far. And you can imagine, you know, if you were to walk back from this whiteboard and look at our human experiences, you know, until you could see the beginning of, where the Big Bang started, you wouldn't even see that mark, right? It'd go back to a pinpoint, and then you couldn't even tell. So in a sense, you know, our impression upon the universe is just nothing really so far. All right, now let's do another timeline. This is a human life. Let's say it's 80, 100 years tops. All right, and this is one life from being a little baby to being a stooped over old person with a walking stick. And that comes in here somewhere, right? That one little life is just a blip within our blip, right? You're starting to get a sense of how small we are, really, how miraculous this experience is. All right, so here's learning to collapse time. Within a human life, within this 80 to 100 years of period here that goes on, we have situations that happen to us. Now, if you're aware, if you're awakening, you'll be aware that every situation that happens to you is a learning opportunity, right? It's not that we're not learning all the time. We learn how to walk when we're a baby by teeter-tottering about and falling over and all these things. But whether we're aware that we're learning, we're actually learning. Our brain is processing things and balance and all this sorts of stuff. And before you know it, we can walk. Conscious learning, where we're not learning because of a primitive need, is supplementary to primitive needs, right? So conscious learning takes on, and I don't want to coin that as a reference, but conscious learning takes on the idea of, let's say, a school education and things where we're forced into learning, or we're told we have to learn something about something, or we choose to learn something about something, right? Based on the meanings we've given everything, which is only our own version of affairs anyway. But within this situation, let's say, learning occurs in relationships. Learning occurs in relationships. You're in a relationship with everything from the time you're born to the time you shuffle off. And that relationship can look like anything. I'm in a relationship with this pen, for example, right? It has a purpose. I know how to use it. It's a symbiotic relationship that I have to try and, and here we are. I'm in a relationship with other people, right? Now, this one's probably slightly more helpful because it's activatable, all right? So a relationship with people. Let's go in our timeline. Here's little Johnny here. And little Johnny meets a little Mary. So there's little Johnny there, and there's little Mary there. Put Mary in a dress, even though that's probably not politically correct these days or something. See how crazy humanity gets. We're just a blip, trying to have things our own way. Right, so Johnny and Mary meet each other, fall in love, what they think love is, which is just nothing really more than a chemical reaction in the mind and a whole bunch of stuff based on stimuli. So, but Johnny and Mary have this relationship. At first, it's good. There's a honeymoon period. They're getting to know each other, whatever. And then Mary starts to notice that Johnny's got this bad nose-picking habit, and it activates her, it triggers her, and whatever. And the good side of the honeymoon period, it starts to dive, So, and then there's this distancing here where they're apart, and they're like, and then they'll come back together and they'll repeat this cycle of attraction and repulsion, attack and defense, whatever it looks like, it doesn't really matter, right? But the thing is, there's a trigger, there's an activating agent for a break in the harmonious or the peaceful nature of the relationship in Mary's mind or Johnny's. It doesn't really matter who's, whatever. So, and this could go on throughout the relationship, throughout the entirety of Johnny's life. He could be having this off again, on again relationship with Mary from the time he's born to the time he shuffles off. And so half of his life could therefore be spent being in despair or upset or miserable, and the other half probably tolerating whatever's going on. And the same for Mary, and somewhere in there, that honeymoon period that seemed to be just blissful and joy and what you want forever falls apart, right? And you spend all this time then repeating cycles of coming back together and then falling apart again, and then coming back together and falling apart. And it's a repetitive thing. And if you look in your own life, you'll see where it is you're excited and where it is you're depressed, and excited and depressed. And I used to work in a steel factory years ago where I was very depressed to have to go to work and stand on a process line and take pieces of preformed guttering that would come out of a machine and stack them onto pallets. And that was my job. That was it. All day, every day. Extremely depressing work and mind-numbing. But I was excited to go home at the end of the day, and then depressed, excited, depressed, excited, depressed, excited. And, the reason being I need the money, whatever. It doesn't matter what you tell yourself you need, right? However, there's a lesson in all these things. So with Johnny and Mary, there's a lesson, there's an opportunity. Mary gets to see what it is she doesn't like about Johnny, right? Now, if the universe is one, if everything is whole, Mary's looking in her mirror, right? The mirror is another concept, another spiritual concept that you cannot avoid. The mirror never lies. You always got to keep your finger on your nose. What you see in someone else is something you don't like about yourself. Perhaps not in the form of association, but in, you may not be a nose picker, but in the energetics of it, okay, in the emotional signature that it brings up. So don't judge the form, apply the principle. Okay, so Mary and Johnny could spend the rest of their lives, which could be half of their life, you could cut that timeline in half, excited, and half of their life miserable, right? Half of their life picking on each other and arguing, and I know people that argue all day, every day in their relationships, and they call that love, and the other half of their relationship quite happy with each other, or at least tolerating once that honeymoon period wears off. Now, the mirror. Rather than spend all this time in this relationship, right, being in and out of this repeating cyclical kind of pattern of cause and effect, rather than do that, if Mary was a student of A Course in Miracles, let's say, or a student of spiritual application, she could put her finger on her nose and say, all right, I don't like what Johnny's doing. I don't like him picking their nose. It makes me feel repugnant or repulsed or whatever, it makes me feel something. And you give it a name, right? This is how you use the mirror. You just give it a name. Keep it simple. Be honest. What do I see in the mirror about Johnny? Right? And you're going to want to look in that mirror and you're going to say, no, well, that's not me. But if you're one with everything, it is you. It's just part of you that you don't want to look at about yourself. Right? So here's everything. Let's say here's a pizza pie, right? A slice of the pie. I don't know if you can see that too well. I'm going to draw that a bit darker. There we go. There's a pie. That pie represents my character, let's say, about myself, or my idea about myself as Dave, human being, spiritual aspirant, whatever. And we divide that pie up into different size slices. We separate ourselves up into different pieces. And the pie is a mirror. Okay, so here's Johnny picking his nose, and I look into the mirror and I say, oh no, that's not me. But if I'm one with everything, there must be somewhere there that I relate to there, because Johnny picking his nose and how I feel about it is an idea in my mind. Okay, it's something that brings up resistance. Now, if I'm one with everything and everything is just love, what can I possibly be in resistance to except love? Right? Johnny is therefore presenting me an opportunity to remember love in that situation. He's giving me an opportunity to heal myself of judgment about what I think love ought to look like, picking nose or not picking nose, to heal my mind of what I think love ought to look like, and to accept things exactly as they are, which is therefore to accept myself, to accept love, to accept all things. All right, can you see that? And so I remove all that emotional, I didn't bring a cloth, but anyway. I remove all that emotional baggage that I've been carrying around based on my judgments of Johnny. So, and it's the same with everything else. And as soon as I heal that, as soon as I take responsibility for what I think I see in Johnny or Mary or whoever it is, I'm healing it in my own mind. I don't want to think that way about them. I want to see the Christ in my brother. I want to see beyond the illusion of the form to the activating agency, or to God or to Christ within that being. I want to see the truth of that person, not what I would project onto them as a good person or a bad person or a person with good habits or bad habits, etc. Right? And then when I've healed that section, when I've looked in that mirror of the reflection that I get back from Johnny, and ask in prayer, the prayer of the heart, for the healing of the mind, right, that believes that Johnny and I are flesh beings, body not spirit, then that little section gets, I'll see if there's a word, that little section gets snipped out where I've separated up Johnny, and I'm now into another whole bigger section, right? I've removed one of the barriers, one of the separating agencies between myself and other people, and all the ideas that I hold about myself. And sometimes when you look in the mirror, you're going to want to see a violent world out there, or someone who's violent or aggressive or whatever. And you're going to go, that's not me. I'm a peaceful person. Nonsense. You wouldn't see it at all. You wouldn't know what it was unless it was part of a framework of thinking about things and judging things in your own mind. If you're retaining ideas of what violence and hatred and lack of love and all these sorts of things are, that's you. You are mind. You are thoughts, right? Your thoughts comprise your actions. Your thoughts stimulate your actions and make you the person you are. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to avoid the darker part of yourself so you can present a beautiful face of being a nice, spiritual, lovely, wonderful person, it's still there eating away at you from the inside. And you'll see it out there and blame other people for the situations in your life rather than taking responsibility for what you see in your mirror of life and healing yourself of your own judgments about things. All right. Now, as you go, and that situation with Johnny and Mary picking his nose, Mary's decided she'll heal it spiritually there. She'll take responsibility for her thoughts about Johnny and ask for forgiveness of her thoughts, not, in prayer, forgiveness of her thoughts and the healing of her mind around that, rather than getting Johnny to, please God, make Johnny stop picking his nose. It's like, no, help me, Lord, to stop judging Johnny and to see Johnny truly. Right? It takes a bit of getting used to, but when that happens, when this dividing barrier between one part of her experience of whole self and another part is removed, then that part, and then this one gets removed, this one gets removed with different situations. And what happens is that this relationship between Johnny and Mary here gets shortened, right? Because this is all a lesson being played out again and again and again until finally Mary says, no, I've had enough of being presented this situation, because what you resist persists. What you resist persists, right? And she nips it in the bud there. She goes, no, I've had enough of that. I don't want to keep doing this for the rest of my life with Johnny. I love him dearly, but I don't want to keep being pissed off about everything he does. Because why would I want to lose my peace of mind over someone picking their nose? Kids pick their nose all day and I just take it for granted, And then all of a sudden, let's say 25 years of this horrible thing within their 80 to 100 year time gets snipped out. That lesson no longer has to show up for Mary to learn that she is whole, that she is one with all things. Can you see that? And then, let's say in another relation, they could play out the same, Johnny and Mary could play out many lessons for each other. So there are always going to be lessons in letting go, lessons in non-judgment, lessons in laying aside grievances and needs and wants and all these things, and accepting the wholeness and the perfection of the moment now, here. And as these lessons that are repeating, suddenly you realize you're being triggered, you realize you're being, that triggers are only indicative of blocks, right? Blocks to love within. As you realize that, hang on, I'm having a reaction to this person, situation, or event again and again and again. What you resist persists, right? A lesson repeats until it's learnt. A lesson repeats until it's learnt. Okay, as you realize that, hang on, I'm being triggered by this, you can heal it, right? Now, the healing happens through the prayer of the heart for the healing of the mind that believes it is separate from the whole. And then as we go about our days, making a new use of time, which is to collapse it. We don't want to be learning these lessons, as we snip bits out, then our own appearance upon the fabric of time and space gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And we no longer have to be here to learn the karmic lessons that our original choice to have an experience of separation from the whole is teaching us, right? We snip a little bit out, we snip a little bit out. And I've got a red pen here. I should use a red pen. But if I use this again, I'll remember to bring a cloth. Note to self. So Alpha and Omega. All right, there's our timeline. The Omega there and the Alpha there. And as we take Johnny and Mary's lesson and snip a little bit out, because they've learnt that lesson, right? What you're doing, you're standing here in the middle with your finger on your nose. Right? I got my finger on my nose there, taking responsibility for all of my triggers, for all of these relationship triggers, all of these relationship buttons that get pushed. Right? I'm snipping out little tiny bits of my own experience in time and space. And what happens is then I'm bringing the Alpha and the Omega closer and closer and closer in my own experience of myself every time I remove one of these defining partitions in my experience of myself that tells me I'm better than this person or worse than that person, I'm worthy or unworthy, guilty, not guilty, etc. Right? And eventually Alpha and the Omega, they come closer and closer and closer, and the here and the now, right? There's no more time. So, and then in that experience is your enlightenment, right? It's pretty simple. I don't know if I can make that any simpler, right? Now, time exists solely as a classroom. Time and space exists solely as the second part of a reparative effort that we call salvation, which, given a new purpose to embark upon a journey of salvation, begins to make sense of the universe around us, begins to make sense of why shit keeps happening, right? Keeps happening. Things keeps happening because it's a lesson, right? Things keep happening because I'm avoiding my whole self. I'm choosing to live in only the good parts of myself that I think I like about myself and others, and keeping the rest of the world trying to do this emotionally from it, or idealistically, or keep it away from me. Can't do that, because it's like trying to hold back half of yourself. It's like, I mean, you can try and do it. I've tried to do it for many years and became a chronic alcoholic and drug addict and all of these things, because the pressure of how evil things were out there seemed to always be opposing my ideas about how nice I wanted to be and how loving I wanted to be in here. And whilst wanting to be that loving and nice person and everything, that's, fair enough, but not at the expense of the whole, right? Because when I'm projecting all my guilt and my shit out onto others, little Johnny's got to continue to pick his nose forever. That's if I'm playing the part of me. I'm little Johnny. I've got to keep picking my nose. I keep getting the results of people yelling at me for picking my nose as a grown man. Whatever that is. All right, so that's collapsing time and space. Take responsibility for what you see in the mirror of your reflection, and heal that idea of separate, or being separate from that person, situation, or event. It's like, no, that person, situation, or event reflects an idea I have about myself. There's not actually a Johnny out there picking his nose. It's just an idea that I have of myself as either being one with that idea or separate from it, either connected or not connected. Ooh, that's horrible, I'm not like that. Or, and as soon as you have this idea of acceptance or connection with something, it ceases to bother you. Once you accept something exactly as it is, it no longer bothers you, and your mind returns to a state of perfect peace. All right, well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed that one. And you might have to watch this a couple of times. Don't forget, I'll put the link down below. And if I forget to put the link down below, somebody please remind me. My mind is of the forgetting these days rather than of the remembering. I'm staying only in the Christ remembering. Trying to. All right, I love you. Take it easy. And that's collapsing time.